James stood like a statue outside Buckingham Palace. His red uniform was bright against the gray London sky. Rain fell softly, but he did not move. He did not blink. He did not wipe away the drops that ran down his face. He was a royal guard, and royal guards do not show feelings. At 22, James was one of the youngest men ever to join the Royal Guard. This was not just any job. It was his dream since he was a small boy. He remembered coming to London with his parents when he was 8. He saw the guards standing tall in their fancy red coats and big black furry hats. They did not move. They did not smile. Even when people made funny faces at them, they just stared ahead. "I want to be like them someday," little James had told his father. His father had laughed. "Those men train very hard. They stand for hours without moving. Could you do that?" The young boy had nodded with sure eyes. Now, 14 years later, he had made that dream come true. But the reality was harder than the dream. James had trained for 6 months to become a guard. 6 months of standing still until his legs shook. 6 months of being yelled at in his face while he tried not to blink. 6 months of learning that his feelings did not matter when he wore the uniform. "You are not a person when on duty," his trainer had shouted. "You are the face of Britain. You are history standing tall. Your small problems mean nothing." Now, 3 hours into his shift, James felt the first signs of trouble. His left foot was going numb. A sharp pain shot up his back. Sweat ran down his neck under the heavy uniform. The big bearskin hat felt like it weighed a ton, but he could not move, not even a little. Nearby, a group of American tourists pointed and took photos. A teenage boy made silly faces, trying to make James laugh or frown. A little girl waved her hand in front of his eyes. "He's like a robot, Mommy," she said loudly. If only they knew. Under the stiff uniform beat a very human heart, a heart that wanted to tell the boy to stop, a heart that wanted to smile at the little girl, a heart that wanted to shift weight from one foot to the other to ease the pain. James remembered his first week on duty. He had almost broken. A fly had landed on his nose and walked slowly across his face. It took every bit of will not to swat it away. That day, he had gone back to the guard's house and cried from the stress. But no one had seen those tears. No one ever would. The rain fell harder now. Water dripped from the edge of his hat onto his nose. A cold drop slid down his back. Shivers wanted to run through his body, but he would not let them. Control. That was what made a royal guard. Total control over every muscle, every feeling, every need. A man in the crowd shouted something rude, trying to get a rise out of him. James did not hear the words. He had learned to go somewhere else in his mind during these long shifts. He thought of home, of his mother's cooking, of fishing with his grandfather when he was young. His body was at the palace, but his mind could travel. Another guard stood 50 feet away. Their eyes never met, but James knew he was not alone. His fellow guard felt the same pain, fought the same battles, made the same sacrifice. There was a bond between them that no outsider could understand. Gray clouds rolled across the London sky. 2 more hours to go before his shift ended. 2 more hours of being stone instead of flesh. 2 more hours of denying every human instinct to move, to stretch, to react. This was the price of the uniform. This was what it meant to be a royal guard. And despite the pain, despite the struggle, James would not have chosen any other life. Because when the flag flew over the palace, when the Queen passed by and nodded to her guards, when children looked up at him with wonder in their eyes, in those moments, the sacrifice felt worth every second. The next morning came too soon. James woke up at 4:30 a.m. in the guard's house near the palace. His muscles were stiff from yesterday's long shift. His back hurt when he sat up. Still, he forced himself out of bed. 20 other men slept in the same room. Some were still deep in sleep. Others were getting ready just like him. No one talked much in the morning. They all knew what was ahead. James went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on his face. In the mirror, he saw dark circles under his eyes. 6 months as a royal guard had changed him. He looked older now. His face seemed harder. The dining hall was plain and simple. James ate a big breakfast. He would need the energy. Eggs, beans, toast, and 3 cups of strong tea. The other guards ate the same way. Some read newspapers, others just stared at their food. The room was quiet except for the sound of forks on plates. "Big day today," said Harry, sitting across from James. "The Prime Minister is coming with some big shots from Japan." James nodded. Special visits meant more pressure, more eyes watching, more time standing without a break. After breakfast, it was time to get ready. The uniform room was busy with men helping each other dress. The red jackets had to look perfect. Every button had to shine. Every strap had to be in the right place. James stood still as his friend Mark checked his uniform. "Turn around," Mark said. "Your back strap is crooked." Mark fixed it. Then James did the same for him. They had learned in training that guard work was about helping each other. No one could do this job alone. The uniform felt heavy. The thick wool was hot even on cool days. The tall bearskin hat added extra weight. Once dressed, James looked at himself in the full-length mirror. He did not see James anymore. He saw a royal guard, part of hundreds of years of history. Captain Wilson walked through the room, checking each guard. He stopped in front of James. "Your left shoulder button needs more shine," he said. James quickly polished it until it gleamed. The captain nodded and moved on. Even one small thing out of place was not allowed. Perfect was the only standard. At 7:00 a.m., the guards lined up in the yard. Captain Wilson walked in front of them, looking at each man closely. "Today is not just any day," he said. "The Prime Minister and Japanese officials will visit. The world will be watching. You will be perfect in every way. You will not move. You will not react to anything. You are not men today. You are the face of Britain." The guards marched to the palace. Their steps matched perfectly. Left, right, left, right. They had practiced this walk for hundreds of hours. Their arms swung at the same angle. Their chins were at the same height. People lined the street to watch them. Tourists took pictures. Children pointed and smiled. To them, it was a show. To James and the others, it was deadly serious. James took his post at the east gate. The morning air was cool now, but he knew the sun would soon make his uniform feel like an oven. He set his face into the blank look all guards wore. He found the spot on the wall across from him that he would stare at for the next 4 hours. Inside, his mind was racing. Would his leg cramp up like yesterday? Would the Japanese visitors try to make him react? Could he ignore the flies that always seemed to find his face in warm weather? Next to him stood Philip, an older guard with 10 years of service. Philip had been kind to James during training. He had shown him tricks to deal with the pain of standing still. "Think of your body as not yours while on duty," Philip had told him. "It belongs to the crown. The pain is not your pain." Now, as they both stood perfectly still, James felt a strange connection to Philip and all the guards who had stood here before him. Men from different times, different worlds, all doing the same duty, all hiding their human needs for something bigger than themselves. A bird landed on the wall nearby. James did not look at it. A woman dropped her bag with a loud bang. James did not flinch. His body was no longer his own. For the next 4 hours, he was not James. He was a royal guard, and nothing in the world could make him show otherwise. 2 hours into his shift, James felt the first real test coming. The sun had climbed higher in the sky. Sweat ran down his back under the thick red coat. His legs had gone from tired to painful. Still, he did not move. The Japanese officials arrived with much noise. Cars pulled up. People with cameras rushed around. Men in dark suits walked quickly, talking into small radios. In the middle of it all, the Prime Minister shook hands with a short Japanese man in a fine suit. James saw it all without turning his head. His eyes stayed fixed straight ahead, but he could see them from the corner of his vision. This was one of the first tricks guards learned: how to see everything while seeming to look at nothing. A group of school children pushed to the front of the crowd. Their teacher tried to keep them in line, but they were too excited. One small boy with red hair broke free and ran right up to James. "Do you ever have to go to the toilet when you're standing here?" the boy asked loudly. People in the crowd laughed. The boy's teacher turned red and pulled him away, saying sorry over and over. Through it all, James did not smile. He did not frown. His face stayed perfectly still, as if made of stone. But inside, James was fighting hard. Part of him wanted to laugh. The boy had asked what every tourist wondered but was too polite to say. And the answer was yes. Dealing with bathroom needs was one of the hardest parts of guard duty. Guards could not leave their post for any reason during their shift. They had to train their bodies to wait. Before duty, they ate and drank carefully, enough to have energy, but not so much that nature would call too soon. It was a science that every guard mastered through painful experience. James remembered his worst day. 3 months ago, food poisoning had hit him during a 4-hour shift. The cramps had been so bad, he nearly fell over. Somehow, he had stayed standing, stayed still, even as his body rebelled. After his shift, he had been sick for hours. The other guards had taken care of him without judgment. They all knew it could happen to any of them. Now, as the sun beat down harder, James felt a new challenge. A fly landed on his cheek. It walked slowly across his skin, its tiny feet tickling. Every nerve in his body screamed at him to swat it away. Instead, he did nothing. The fly reached the corner of his eye. James did not blink. He did not twitch. This was all part of the test. In his training, the instructors had put honey on the faces of new guards, attracting flies and bees. Those who moved, who showed any reaction, were punished with extra hours of standing practice. James had passed those tests, but real duty was harder. There was no end time to this test, no instructor to say, "Well done." There was only duty, hour after hour. Nearby, one of the Japanese officials was taking pictures of the palace. The man turned and pointed his camera at James. The flash went off right in James's eyes. James did not blink. He did not turn away. His eyes burned from the bright light, but he showed nothing. This was the true skill of the Royal Guard. Not just standing still, but controlling every tiny muscle, every natural reaction. Most people thought it was about not moving the big muscles, arms and legs. But guards knew the real challenge was controlling the small movements, the blink when dust hit your eye, the twitch when a fly landed on you, the swallow when your throat was dry. The official took 3 more pictures, the flash going off each time. James's eyes watered, but he did not blink away the tears. He let them form and fall naturally, as if they were just another part of his still face. A woman in the crowd pointed at the tear on James's cheek. "Look, that one is crying," she said. Her friend shook her head. "It's just the sun making his eyes water. They're not allowed to have feelings on duty." James heard them but gave no sign. If only they knew the truth. Guards had all the same feelings as everyone else. They just learned to bury them deep inside while the uniform was on. As the Japanese officials moved into the palace, James stayed frozen in place. 3 more hours to go. The hardest test was still ahead. The changing of the guard was coming. For most tourists, this was the big moment they waited for. For James, it meant his first break after 5 hours of standing still. He could hear the drums now. The next group of guards was marching toward them. Their heavy boots made a steady beat on the stone path. James kept his eyes straight ahead, but he felt relief inside. Soon he could move again. Soon he could be a human and not a statue. The crowd grew larger as people heard the drums. They pushed forward, trying to get the best spot to watch. A small girl was pushed against the rope barrier near James. She looked scared as adults towered over her. No one seemed to notice her. She looked up at James with wide, fearful eyes. Every part of James wanted to help her. In regular life, he would have reached out, found her parents, made sure she was safe. But in his uniform, he could do nothing. He was not allowed to move, to speak, to show that he saw her. This was the hardest part of his duty, seeing people who needed help but not being able to act. The girl's lip trembled. She looked close to tears. James kept his face still, but he made one tiny change. He lowered his eyes to meet hers for just a second. It was against the rules. Guards were never supposed to make eye contact with anyone, but he couldn't let her think she was alone and scared with no one seeing her. That small look seemed to help. The girl stood a little straighter. Then a woman pushed through the crowd, looking worried. "Emma, there you are." The woman picked up the girl and held her tight. "I was so scared when I couldn't find you." James looked straight ahead again. No one had noticed his small break from the rules, but that moment stayed with him. It reminded him that under the uniform, he was still human. The new guards arrived, lining up in perfect formation. Now came the ceremony that tourists love to watch. Each movement was exact. Each step was measured. The guards moved like parts of one machine. James had practiced these movements thousands of times. His body knew what to do without him having to think about it. Left foot forward, right arm up, turn 90 degrees, face the palace. It was like a dance where every step had been done the same way for hundreds of years. As he went through the ceremony, James thought about the guards who had done these same moves long ago. Men in the same uniform standing in the same spot during World War I, guards standing tall during the Blitz in World War II as bombs fell on London. Guards at the crowning of Queen Elizabeth so many years ago. Now it was his turn to be part of that long line. When the ceremony was done, James marched away with the other guards who had finished their shift. To the crowd, it looked perfect. What they didn't see was the pain in every step. After standing still for so long, James's legs felt like they weren't his own. His knees were stiff. His feet burned. But he kept his steps perfectly in time with the others as they marched back to the guard's house. Only when they were inside, away from public eyes, did the guards' faces change. Some winced in pain. Others stretched their stiff backs. A few sat down quickly, unable to stand any longer. "Water," called out Captain Wilson. "Everyone drink water now." James took a bottle and drank deeply. His throat was so dry it hurt to swallow. Standing in the hot sun without drinking was another test guards faced every day. "Good work today," the captain said. "Richards, I saw you handle that camera flash without a blink. Well done. Thompson, excellent posture even in hour 5. James waited to hear his name. Had the captain seen his small moment with the lost girl? Was he in trouble? And Harwick, the captain said, looking at James, "Sometimes kindness matters more than rules." James looked up in surprise. The captain's face was serious, but his eyes were kind. He had seen what James did, but he wasn't angry. For the first time that day, James allowed himself to smile. "Rest for 1 hour," the captain continued. "Then we review for tomorrow. The Japanese officials will tour the grounds, and we need to discuss positions." As the other guards moved away, the captain put a hand on James's shoulder. "Being the good guard doesn't mean being less human," he said quietly. "It means being more. Remember that." Summer brought new challenges. July hit London with a heat wave that broke records. For 5 days straight, the temperature climbed above 90 degrees. For regular people, it meant lighter clothes and cold drinks. For the Royal Guards, it meant suffering. James stood at his post as sweat ran down his face and neck. The thick wool uniform felt like an oven. The bearskin hat trapped heat against his head. He could feel sweat pooling in his boots. His vision blurred at times from the heat. Already that week, 2 guards had fainted during duty. The newspapers showed pictures of the men being carried away. The palace had cut shift times in half, But it wasn't enough. Standing still in this heat was dangerous. "Water break in 10 minutes," a supervisor whispered as he walked past James. This was new. Normally, guards never got breaks during their shift. The heat had forced a change in the rules. James fought to stay focused. The world seemed to waver in front of him. He blinked slowly, trying to clear his vision. His mouth was so dry his tongue felt like paper. Just 10 more minutes. He could make it 10 more minutes. In the crowd, a woman looked at him with worry on her face. "That poor man looks like he's about to collapse," she said to her husband. "Why do they make them wear those heavy uniforms in this heat?" The husband shrugged. "Tradition, I guess. Been the same for hundreds of years." James heard them, but kept staring ahead. They were right. Tradition was why he stood here in wool when the weather called for the lightest cotton. Tradition was why he wore a tall bearskin hat that had no purpose except ceremony. Tradition was why he suffered. But tradition was also why people came from all over the world to see the guards. It was why children looked at him with wonder. It was why he felt part of something bigger than himself. 8 more minutes until the water break. James counted seconds in his head to stay alert. He had learned this trick in training. Count the seconds, and the mind stays sharp. Suddenly, a loud bang came from nearby. A car had backfired in the street. Most people jumped or looked around. James did not move. His training had prepared him for this. Loud noises were part of the test. But the heat made everything harder. As the sound rang in his ears, James felt a wave of dizziness. The world tilted sideways. His knees felt weak. "No," he thought. "Not now. I will not fall." With every bit of will, he fought to stay upright. He locked his knees. He focused his eyes on one spot on the wall across from him. He thought of the captain's words from last night. "This is the test. This is what makes a guard." The supervisor appeared again, moving quickly now. He must have seen something in James's face, some sign that he was near his limit. At ease, the supervisor said quietly, "Water break now." The other guard nearby turned slightly. James did the same. It was a small movement, barely noticeable to the crowd, but it meant they could drink. The supervisor handed each man a water bottle hidden inside a special pocket in their uniform. James raised it to his lips and drank. The water was warm but felt like heaven on his dry throat. He wanted to gulp it all, but he knew better. Small sips. Too much at once would make him sick. After 30 seconds, the supervisor took back the bottles. "Return to position," he said. James turned forward again and went still. The small amount of water had helped, but he knew the real test was still ahead. 3 more hours in the baking sun. Behind him, he heard the supervisor talking quietly into his radio, showing signs of heat distress. Request shift change in 1 hour instead of 3. James felt both relief and shame. Relief that he might get out of the sun sooner. Shame that he had shown weakness. A memory came to him then. His first week of training. A senior guard had collapsed during a practice stand. The training officer had been angry. "Weakness," he had shouted. The guard shows no weakness. But then Captain Wilson had stepped in. "There's a difference between weakness and human limits," the captain had said. "A good guard knows the difference." Now, as the sun beat down and his uniform clung to his wet skin, James understood. This wasn't about never showing weakness. It was about knowing when to push through and when to accept help. A light breeze finally stirred the air. It wasn't much, but to James it felt like a gift. Sometimes small mercies made all the difference. In the distance, he saw the first signs of clouds gathering. Maybe rain would come and break the heat. Until then, he would stand his post, 1 minute at a time, 1 second at a time. This was his duty, and he would honor it. The heat wave finally broke after 7 long days. Rain fell on London, washing away the dust and cooling the air. For James, it was a blessed relief. But with the cooler weather came a new test, one he had not expected. It was his day off, the first in 2 weeks. James planned to sleep late, then meet his old school friend Tom for lunch. They had not seen each other in 6 months. Tom was still in their hometown, working in his father's shop. Their lives had gone in very different directions. James slept until 9. Late for him now, though once he had easily slept until noon. His body clock had changed with guard duty. Even on days off, he woke early. He put on regular clothes, jeans, and a t-shirt. It felt strange after so many days in uniform. He looked at himself in the mirror and hardly recognized the man staring back. His face was thinner. His eyes seemed older. His back was straighter than before he joined the guard. Tom was waiting at the small cafe they had chosen. He jumped up with a big smile when he saw James. James, man, it's been ages. He gave James a hug, slapping him on the back. James hugged him back, but felt stiff doing it. Physical touch had become rare in his life. Guards stood apart. They didn't hug or shake hands often. "Good to see you, Tom," he said, meaning it even if his voice sounded formal. They sat down and ordered food. Tom talked nonstop about home, about people they knew, about funny things that had happened at the shop. He laughed loudly and moved his hands when he talked. He was full of life and energy. James tried to match his friend's easy manner, but it was hard. He sat straight in his chair, his face showing little emotion. When he spoke, his words were careful and measured. He had gotten used to speaking only when necessary, saying only what mattered. Tom noticed the change. "You're different," he said suddenly. "You're like, I don't know, like someone put you in a box and pressed all the wrinkles out." "What do you mean?" James asked, though he knew. "You're so still, so serious. You hardly laugh anymore." Tom leaned forward. "Is it really that bad, being a guard? Do they brainwash you or something?" James shook his head. "It's not like that. It's just," he struggled to explain, "when you spend most of your day not moving, not speaking, not reacting, it becomes a habit." "Sounds awful," Tom said. "Why do it?" This question hit James hard. Why did he do it? Sometimes he asked himself the same thing. "It matters," he said finally. "It's something that matters." Tom shrugged, not understanding. "If you say so." They ate in silence for a while. James felt a gap growing between them, between his old life and his new one. It made him sad, but he didn't know how to bridge it. After lunch, they walked through a park. Children played on swings. Dogs chased balls. Regular people doing regular things. James watched them with a strange feeling of distance, as if he was looking through a window at another world. "Remember when we used to play football here?" Tom asked, pointing to a grassy area. James nodded. "Every Saturday. You were always better than me." "Yeah, but you tried harder." Tom looked at him closely. "You still do that. Try harder than anyone else." A small boy ran past them, chasing a ball. He bumped into James's legs and fell down. Without thinking, James helped him up with perfect movements. Not too fast, not too slow. His face stayed calm and controlled. "You okay, little man?" Tom asked the boy with a big smile. The boy nodded and ran off. Tom turned to James. "See what I mean? Even the way you helped that kid was all controlled." The old James would have made a silly face to make him laugh, would have messed up his hair or something. James felt a stone in his stomach. Tom was right. The old James would have done those things. When had he stopped being that person? They reached a bench and sat down. A silence fell between them, not the comfortable silence of old friends, but the awkward silence of people who used to know each other. "I miss the old you," Tom said finally. "But I guess you can't be a perfect guard and still be, you know, normal." The words hurt, but James couldn't deny them. Guard duty had changed him, inside and out. The question was it worth it? As they sat there, a group of tourists walked by. One pointed at James. "That's one of them. One of the guards. I can tell by how he sits." James felt Tom looking at him. His friend's face showed both pride and sadness. "Guess you can't take off the uniform even when you're not wearing it," Tom said. Autumn came to London. Leaves turned gold and red. The air grew cool. For the guards, it was a welcome change after the hot summer. Their heavy uniforms now kept them warm instead of making them sweat. James had been a Royal Guard for almost 1 year now. He felt different from the young man who had first put on the uniform. He was stronger in some ways, weaker in others. His body had learned to stand for hours without moving. His mind had learned to stay alert while looking blank. But something inside him still struggled with the cost of it all. One October morning, Captain Wilson called him to his office. "Harwick, I have news for you," the captain said. "The royal family will visit the palace next week. The Queen has asked for our best guards to be on duty." James felt a rush of pride. "Yes, sir. You will be at the main entrance, front and center." The captain looked at him closely. "This is a great honor, Harwick." "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." All week, James and the chosen guards practiced extra hours. Every movement had to be perfect. Every uniform had to shine. This was not for tourists with cameras. This was for the Queen herself. On the morning of the visit, James woke before dawn. He polished his buttons until they gleamed like small suns. He brushed his uniform again and again, removing every speck of dust. When he put on his bearskin hat, he stood a little taller, feeling the weight of the moment. At his post by the main entrance, James could feel eyes watching him. Not just the usual tourists, but palace officials checking that everything was perfect. The air felt charged with importance. Then he saw them. Cars with royal flags turning into the palace gates. Guards opening doors. Men in suits speaking into radios. And then, stepping out of a car, the Queen herself. Even from a distance, she had a special presence. Small in size, but huge in importance. She wore a bright blue coat and hat. She smiled and waved to the small crowd allowed inside the gates. James stood perfectly still as she came closer. His training took over completely now. His face showed nothing, but inside his heart beat faster. This was what all the hard work was for. This moment. The Queen walked up the steps with her family behind her. As she passed James, something amazing happened. She paused. She turned slightly toward him, and she spoke. "The guards look especially fine today," she said to her aide. But her eyes were on James when she said it. James did not move, did not smile, did not bow his head in thanks. That was not what guards did. But inside, he felt a warm glow of pride that she had noticed. The royal party moved inside the palace. James remained at his post, standing tall. For the next 4 hours, he did not move. The cold wind blew. His nose began to run in the chill air, but he did not wipe it. His left leg developed a cramp, but he did not shift his weight. This was his finest hour, and he would not show weakness. Later that afternoon, as the Queen left the palace, she passed James again. This time, she did not speak, but she gave a small nod, so small that maybe only James saw it. It was a nod of respect, of understanding. That tiny movement meant more to James than any loud praise. It told him that she knew what it cost to stand there, showing nothing. She knew what guards gave up to serve. That evening in the guard's house, Captain Wilson gathered everyone together. "Her Majesty was pleased with the guards today," he said. She specifically mentioned the exceptional discipline and presence on display. The men stood a little straighter, proud but not showing it too much. Guards learned to hide pride just as they hid other feelings. "Harwick," the captain said. Her aide asked for your name. "The Queen noticed you in particular." A murmur went through the room. This was rare. The Queen saw hundreds of guards every year. To be noticed, to be named, was special. "Well done," the captain said simply. That night, James called his parents. When he told them about the Queen noticing him, his mother cried with pride. His father, not a man of many words, simply said, "That's my boy." After the call, James stood at the window of the guard's house, looking out at the lights of London. He thought about all the things guard duty had taken from him, the easy friendships, the natural movements, the free showing of feelings. But he also thought about what it had given him, the pride of perfect duty, the strength to overcome pain, and now, the honor of royal notice. For the first time in many months, he felt sure the cost was high. But on days like today, the reward was higher. Winter brought snow to London. White flakes fell on the palace, on the grounds, and on the guards who stood their posts without moving. For James, this was his first winter as a royal guard. Cold was a different kind of test than heat. One December morning, as he prepared for duty, Captain Wilson came to see him. "Harwick, I have a special task for you today," the captain said. "A group of children from St. Mary's Hospital are visiting the palace. They are very sick children who may not see another Christmas. The palace has arranged this special tour for them." James nodded, wondering what this had to do with him. "You will be on duty at the east entrance," the captain continued. "The children will pass by you. They have been told about the guards, about how you never move or speak." The captain paused, looking uncomfortable. This was unusual for him. "The thing is, Harwick, one of the boys, Tommy, age 7, has a wish. He wants to see a guard smile. Just once." James felt a jolt of surprise. What the captain was suggesting went against everything he had learned. "Sir, are you asking me to break protocol?" The captain's face was serious. "I am asking you to remember that while we serve tradition, we also serve people. Sometimes one matters more than the other." As James took his post that morning, his mind was full of mixed feelings. All his training said to stand still, to show nothing. But the captain's words kept coming back to him. From the corner of his eye, he saw them coming. A group of small children, some in wheelchairs, some walking slowly with helpers. Their faces were pale. Some had no hair from their treatments, but their eyes were bright with excitement. A nurse was speaking to them. "The guards are very special soldiers. They stand still for hours. They never smile or talk while on duty. It's a very old tradition." The children looked at James with wonder. One small girl waved. A boy called out, "Hello, soldier." James kept still, staring straight ahead as he had been trained. Then he saw him, a tiny boy in a wheelchair. He wore a hat with the royal crown on it, much too big for his small head. His face was thin and white, but his eyes were full of life. This must be Tommy. The nurse wheeled him closer to James. "This is Tommy," she said. "He's very excited to meet a royal guard." Tommy looked up at James. "They said you never smile," the boy said. "Not ever. Is that true?" James stared ahead, not answering, not moving. This was his duty. "I bet I can make you smile," Tommy said. His voice was weak but determined. "Want to know how?" James said nothing, did nothing. Inside, he felt torn between his training and something deeper. Tommy leaned forward in his wheelchair. "I'm going to be a guard when I grow up," he said. "I've been practicing standing still. Want to see?" With great effort, the small boy pushed himself up from his wheelchair. His thin legs shook. A nurse moved to help him, but he shook his head. "I can do it," he said. Tommy stood as straight as his sick body could manage. He pulled his shoulders back. He put on a serious face. He was copying James exactly. "Look," he said proudly. "I'm a guard too." Something broke inside James then. Not his discipline or his training, but a wall he had built between duty and humanity. In that moment, he saw with perfect clarity what mattered most. Slowly, deliberately, James moved. He turned his head and looked down at Tommy. And then, for the first time while in uniform, he smiled. The children gasped. The nurses put hands to their mouths. Tommy's face lit up with pure joy. "I did it," he cried. "I made the guard smile." James bent down until he was eye level with Tommy. "You did," he said softly. Because you are the bravest person I've ever met. Tommy reached out a small hand and touched the sleeve of James's red coat. We're both guards now, he said. Yes, James agreed. We are. Later, after the children had gone, Captain Wilson found James back at his post, standing still as tradition required. I heard what happened, the captain said. James kept looking straight ahead. I broke protocol. Sir. Yes, you did. The captain was quiet for a moment. The palace called. That boy, Tommy. It was the happiest moment of his life. James felt something in his throat. Will there be consequences, sir? For showing humanity when it was needed most? No, Harwick. There are rules, and then there is what the Guard truly stands for, the best of British character. The captain almost smiled. The Queen herself said, when told of it, some moments call for strength of a different kind. That night, as James cleaned his uniform and prepared for the next day's duty, he thought about his journey as a guard. He had learned to stand still for hours, to ignore pain, to hide his feelings. But today he had learned the most important lesson, knowing when humanity matters more than protocol. Being a royal guard would always be hard. It would always test his body and mind. It would always separate him, in some ways, from normal life. But James now understood that suppressing emotion wasn't about losing his humanity. It was about controlling it, saving it, so that when it truly mattered, he could choose to show it. Tomorrow, he would stand at attention again, face blank, body still. But he would carry with him the memory of Tommy's smile and the knowledge that sometimes the greatest honor comes not from standing still, but from knowing when to move.